The first sign that my inheritance was gone was not a letter from an attorney. It was a white wooden board planted in my grandmother's rose garden. Sold. Beneath it, in smaller gold letters, was the name I had spent 20 years trying to forget. Vanessa Cole Properties. For a moment, I sat behind the steering wheel and listened to the funeral bells fading across town. My grandmother had been buried less than an hour earlier. The soil on her grave was still fresh. And somehow, the house she had promised would always be mine already belonged to the woman who had made my teenage years unbearable. Then the front door opened. Vanessa stepped onto the porch wearing cream-colored heels, holding my grandmother's antique brass key between two manicured fingers. She looked directly at me. And smiled. "Claire," she called. "You should have knocked. This isn't your home anymore." What I did not know yet was that Vanessa had not stolen the house from me. My mother had handed it to her. And she had done it long before my grandmother died. My grandmother used to say a house remembered everything. Not in a supernatural way. She did not believe in ghosts, or signs, or voices hidden in walls. She meant that people left pieces of themselves behind. A shallow groove in the kitchen floor where someone always stood while stirring soup. A loose stair that complained beneath one particular footstep. The faint scent of lavender trapped inside a wardrobe long after the clothes were gone. Cedar House remembered 4 generations of women from my family. By the time I was 9, it remembered me too. It remembered the summers the first spent sleeping beneath the sloped ceiling of the east bedroom. It remembered my grandmother, Eleanor, teaching me how to make pastry without measuring anything. It remembered me crying at the dining table after my father left. And it remembered my mother sitting in the next room, turning the television louder so she would not have to hear me. I was 34 when my grandmother died. The call came at 5:17 on a Tuesday morning. My mother's voice was calm. Too calm. "Your grandmother passed in her sleep," she said. There was no greeting. No trembling breath. No moment where she seemed to search for the right words. Just a statement delivered with the efficiency of someone confirming a cancelled appointment. I sat up in my apartment, pressing the phone against my ear while the city glowed blue beyond the windows. "Were you with her?" A pause. "She had a nurse." "That isn't what I asked." My mother sighed softly. "Claire, please don't begin." That was how she spoke whenever I noticed something she wanted ignored. Not "you're wrong." Not "let me explain." Just a gentle accusation that my awareness itself was an inconvenience. I closed my eyes. "When is the funeral?" "Friday." "I'll be there." Another pause. This one lasted longer. "You don't have to stay afterward." I looked toward the half-packed suitcase beneath my desk. I had already planned to return. Not only for the funeral. 3 weeks earlier, my grandmother had called me and asked whether I still wanted Cedar House. Her voice had been weak but perfectly clear. "It needs someone who remembers what it is," she had said. "Your mother sees land. You see home." I told her I wanted it. I told her I would leave the city, reduce my consulting work, and restore the place slowly. There had been silence on the line. Then I heard her exhale. Not with sadness. With relief. "It will be yours," she said. I made sure. Now my mother was telling me not to stay. That should have frightened me. Instead, I mistook it for grief. The town looked smaller when I returned. The pharmacy had become a boutique hotel. The old cinema was now a furniture showroom. Even the high school had replaced its red brick entrance with polished glass, as if enough modern architecture could erase what happened inside it. I drove past without slowing down. Still, my body remembered. My shoulders tightened. My jaw locked. And for half a second, I was 17 again, walking down a corridor while girls whispered behind me. Vanessa Cole had never hit me. That would have been easier to explain. She preferred smaller injuries. A private photograph sent to half the school. A false rumor delivered with concern. A scholarship application that disappeared from the guidance office after she learned we were competing for it. She had perfected the art of hurting people while appearing surprised by their pain. Whenever a teacher confronted her, Vanessa widened her eyes and said, "I was only trying to help." Her parents owned 3 dealerships and half the commercial property downtown. Mine were divorcing. Money gave Vanessa credibility. Silence made me look guilty. By graduation, she had turned my isolation into entertainment. I left town the following morning and did not return for 16 years. Not until my grandmother's funeral. The church smelled of lilies and damp wool. Rain tapped against the stained glass windows as people filled the pews, shaking umbrellas and speaking in low voices. My grandmother had spent 78 years in that town. She had delivered meals to sick neighbors, organized library fundraisers, and quietly paid the heating bills of families who never learned where the money came from. The church should have been overflowing. Instead, half the front section was reserved for people I did not recognize. Women in sculpted black dresses. Men checking watches that cost more than my first car. My mother stood among them near the altar. She wore pearl earrings and a fitted black coat I had never seen before. When she noticed me, she did not move to embrace me. Her gaze traveled over my navy dress, my damp hair, and the overnight bag hanging from my shoulder. "You came directly here?" "My train was delayed." "You could have changed at the hotel." "I wasn't aware I had a hotel." Her lips pressed together. "I assumed you booked one." "I have a room at Cedar House." The change in her face lasted less than a second. But I saw it. A quick tightening around the eyes. Then it disappeared. "Not today," she said. "Why?" "Your grandmother's things are being handled." "By whom?" "Claire." She looked past me toward the arriving mourners. "Please. Not here." My mother had always relied on location as a form of control. "Not at dinner." "Not in public." "Not while your father is here." "Not while I have a headache." She never refused a conversation directly. She simply postponed it until my feelings became old enough to dismiss. Before I could answer, a familiar voice drifted from behind her. "Diane, the flowers from the company have arrived." I knew the voice before I saw the face. Some memories do not fade. They wait. Vanessa Cole walked toward us in a black dress with a narrow belt at the waist. Her blonde hair rested smoothly against her shoulders, untouched by the rain. She was older, of course. There were fine lines beside her eyes and an expensive restraint in the way she moved. But the smile was the same. Warm enough for witnesses. Sharp enough for me. "Claire Rowan," she said. "I heard you were coming back." My mother looked between us as though she had forgotten we knew one another. "You remember Vanessa?" "I remember." Vanessa opened her arms slightly, inviting a hug she knew I would not accept. "It's been forever." 16 years. Her smile held. "You always were good with numbers." "So were you," I said. "Especially when they belonged to other people." My mother inhaled. Vanessa gave a small laugh. Not offended. Amused. The exact sound she used in high school whenever I tried to defend myself. "I'm sorry about Eleanor," she said. "She was a remarkable woman." "You knew my grandmother?" "Everyone knew Eleanor." That wasn't my question. Her eyes flicked briefly toward my mother. There it was. A silent exchange. Fast. Practiced. My mother touched my elbow. The service is starting. I looked down at her hand until she removed it. During the funeral, I watched my mother more than the priest. She did not cry during the hymns. She did not cry when the priest spoke about my grandmother's generosity. She did not cry when I stood at the lectern and described the woman who taught me that kindness should never be performed for applause. But when the attorney entered through the side door 20 minutes late, my mother turned immediately. Her entire body changed. Her shoulders lifted. Her hands tightened around the program. She watched him take a seat in the final pew. That was when I understood. My mother was not numb. She was waiting. At the cemetery, rain darkened the shoulders of my coat as the coffin descended. I placed one white rose onto the polished wood. For one quiet moment, the people around me disappeared. I remembered my grandmother's kitchen in winter. The radio playing softly. Her hands covered in flour. The way she would glance at me before saying something important, as though she wanted to be certain I was fully present. Never confuse being wanted with being valued, she once told me. I had been 22 and heartbroken over a man whose affection appeared only when he needed something. At the time, I thought she was talking about him. Years later, I realized she had been teaching me how to understand my mother. After the burial, mourners gathered beneath a canvas shelter near the cemetery gates. My mother moved among them, receiving condolences with polished gratitude. Vanessa stood beside her. Not with her own family. Beside mine. They spoke quietly until Vanessa noticed me watching. She leaned closer to my mother and whispered something. My mother's expression hardened. Then she approached me alone. There will be a small reception at the hotel, she said. I'm going to the house. Claire, I told you. You told me not to stay. You didn't tell me why. She looked toward the people nearby. Your grandmother's belongings are being catalogued. I can help. That won't be necessary. I'm not asking whether it's necessary. Her voice dropped. The house is no longer available. The rain seemed to grow louder. What does that mean? She adjusted one of her gloves. A useless, elegant movement. It means there have been changes. What changes? We will discuss it privately. We're private enough. Not here. I stepped closer. Is Cedar House still part of the estate? My mother looked directly into my eyes. And lied. I don't know all the details yet. Behind her, the attorney lowered his gaze. That was the moment I knew he had the details. And so did she. I did not attend the reception. I drove to Cedar House. The road curved beyond the church, past the old orchard, and climbed toward the ridge where the property sat behind a low stone wall. Every bend felt familiar. The leaning mailbox. The sycamore tree split by lightning. The field where my grandfather once taught me to drive in a truck with no passenger side mirror. I had spent years imagining my return. In those versions, the house waited for me. A little neglected. A little tired. But intact. I pictured opening the windows, washing the curtains, and finding my grandmother's reading glasses beside her favorite chair. I had even saved photographs of paint colors. That was how certain I had been. Then I reached the gate. The chain was gone. The old wooden sign bearing our family name had been removed. In its place stood a newly installed property board. White. Clean. Final. Sold. My car rolled to a stop. I read the name once. Then again. Vanessa Cole Properties. For several seconds, I did not breathe correctly. The air entered my lungs in shallow fragments. My fingers remained wrapped around the steering wheel, although the engine was off. There are betrayals that arrive loudly. A confession. A slammed door. A voice raised across a room. This one stood quietly in the rain. Printed in gold. The garden gate opened. Two men in work clothes carried one of my grandmother's velvet chairs toward a moving truck. I got out of the car. Stop. The word came out stronger than I felt. One of the men paused. Ma'am? Where are you taking that? He glanced at the house. We were told to clear the east rooms. By whom? Before he could answer, the front door opened. Vanessa stepped onto the porch. She had changed out of her funeral coat. Her cream heels looked absurd against the wet stone steps. In one hand, she held my grandmother's brass key. In the other, a glass of white wine. She studied me with an expression that almost resembled sympathy. Almost. Claire, she called. You should have knocked. I stared at the key. She noticed. Slowly, she curled her fingers around it. This isn't your home anymore. The movers looked away. Vanessa descended 2 steps and stopped beneath the porch roof. I assumed Diane told you. My mother told me there had been changes. Well. She glanced toward the sign. That is one way to describe it. When did you buy this house? The agreement was finalized 8 weeks ago. 8 weeks. My grandmother had still been alive. I saw her in my mind, sitting beside the window during our last video call, a blanket over her knees. She had been tired. But lucid. She told me the house would be mine. 8 weeks ago, it had already been sold. Did my grandmother approve the sale? Vanessa lifted her glass. You would need to ask the trustee. My mother. Her silence answered before her mouth did. I walked toward the porch. Did Eleanor know? Claire, I'm not discussing private business on a driveway. You're drinking wine in my grandmother's doorway on the day of her funeral. Her mouth tightened. For the moment, I'm trying to remain respectful. Then answer me. She looked toward the movers. Take 10 minutes. They left the chair beside the truck and walked toward the rear garden. Vanessa waited until they were out of earshot. Then she lowered her voice. Your grandmother's care was expensive. The property needed repairs. There were taxes, legal fees, maintenance costs. Your mother made a practical decision. A practical decision that benefited you. I paid the agreed price. How much? That is confidential. It was my inheritance. No, she said softly. It was an expectation. The sentence landed exactly where she intended. Vanessa had always understood that the most effective cruelty contained a little truth. An inheritance is not yours until the law says it is. A promise is not ownership. A memory is not a deed. She stepped closer. I know you were attached to this place. But attachment doesn't preserve a roof. Money does. My grandmother had money. Less than you think. Then why sell it to you? She gave the smallest shrug. Because I was ready to buy. I looked past her into the entrance hall. The grandfather clock was gone. Plastic sheets covered the floor. A stack of wallpaper samples sat on the console where my grandmother once kept family photographs. What are you doing to it? Restoring it. You're stripping it. I'm modernizing it. For what? Vanessa smiled. Private executive retreats. Leadership weekends. Small corporate events. The view is wasted on one family. One family. For generations reduced to inefficient occupancy. I could feel anger rising through me, hot and humiliating. Vanessa watched for it. She wanted the outburst. She wanted proof that I was still the girl she remembered. So I kept my voice level. Where are my grandmother's personal things? Your mother selected what she wanted. And the rest? Some were donated. Some were included with the sale. Included? The antiques added value. I stared at her. You bought her belongings too? I purchased the contents listed in the agreement. She took a slow sip of wine. Your mother was very thorough. A black car turned through the gate. My mother climbed out before the driver could open her door. She crossed the gravel quickly, her composure cracking for the first time that day. I told you not to come here. I laughed once. There was no humor in it. Yes. I understand why now. She looked toward Vanessa. I'll handle this. Vanessa remained where she was. This is my property, Diane. Something moved between them. Not friendship. Not quite business. Leverage. My mother walked closer to me. Get in your car. I'm not 16. Then stop behaving as though you are. There it was. The familiar reversal. She had sold the house. I had discovered it. And somehow my reaction was the problem. When did you decide to sell? The trust required responsible management. When? The property was draining resources. When? Last winter. My grandmother's last winter. While I sent her books and heated blankets. While my mother sent photographs showing the two of them smiling beside the Christmas tree. You told me the trust was stable. It was, until medical expenses increased. What medical expenses? Her nurse was paid through long-term care insurance. My mother's eyes shifted. Barely. But enough. I continued. And the property taxes were paid ahead. Grandma showed me the receipts. Vanessa set her wineglass on the porch railing. My mother looked at her. That glance told me I had touched something neither of them expected me to know. Financial matters are complicated, my mother said. They become less complicated when people stop lying. Do not accuse me of theft. I haven't yet. Her face changed. A flush spread upward from her collar. Everything was done legally. That wasn't my question. She folded her arms. What exactly do you want from me? The truth. No. You want a villain. I drove 300 miles believing I was coming home. You left this town 16 years ago. Because you let people destroy me here. Vanessa's expression went still. My mother glanced toward her. This has nothing to do with high school. It has everything to do with high school. You sold the one place I still belonged to the person who made sure I belonged nowhere. Oh, please, Vanessa said quietly. We were teenagers. I turned toward her. You sent private photographs of me to the school. I apologized. You told the principal I sent them myself for attention. I don't remember that. I do. My mother stepped between us. This is exactly why I didn't tell you before the funeral. I looked at her. You didn't tell me because you knew I would stop you. The sale was completed. Then why were you afraid I'd come to the house? She said nothing. I felt the answer form before I understood it. I looked toward the moving truck. Then back at my mother. What is still inside? Claire. What haven't you removed yet? Her silence was different this time. Not defensive. Calculating. I walked past her toward the porch. Vanessa moved to block the door. You cannot enter without permission. My grandmother's documents are in the East Study. My mother's head snapped toward me. I saw panic. Real panic. It lasted no more than a heartbeat. But after a childhood spent studying her moods, I recognized it immediately. What documents? Vanessa asked. I kept my eyes on my mother. Grandma kept copies of everything. Bank statements. Insurance letters. Trust amendments. She never signed a document without photocopying it. That study has been cleared, my mother said. By you? Yes. Where are the files? Destroyed. They were outdated. My grandmother kept grocery receipts for 7 years. She would not have destroyed trust records. And my mother knew I knew that. The three of us stood beneath the gray afternoon light while rainwater fell steadily from the roof. Vanessa reached for her wineglass. Her hand was no longer perfectly steady. That was the first time I realized she might not know everything my mother had done. A voice came from inside the house. Ms. Cole? A young contractor appeared in the doorway holding a small metal box. We found this behind the built-in shelves. It has a name on it. My mother moved first. Too quickly. I'll take it. But the contractor looked down at the label. Then at me. Claire Rowan? The world narrowed. The rain. The trucks. The funeral flowers still pinned to my coat. All of it blurred around that box. My grandmother had written my name across the lid in black marker. Vanessa reached for it. This was included in the contents. No, I said. My voice was quiet. But everyone stopped. The contractor hesitated. My mother's face had lost its color. Give it to me, she said. He looked between us. I'm not sure who legally. It belongs to my daughter, my mother said suddenly. Vanessa turned toward her. You just said the contents were transferred. This is personal. You represented that all personal property had been removed. And I'm correcting that now. Their politeness had vanished. For the first time, I was not looking at two women standing together against me. I was looking at two people who had made an agreement neither fully trusted. The contractor handed me the box. It was heavier than it looked. A small brass padlock secured the front. Taped beneath the handle was a folded envelope. My grandmother's handwriting covered the front. For Claire. Open alone. My mother took one step toward me. Whatever is inside, we should review it together. I looked at her. 5 minutes earlier, she claimed the documents had been destroyed. Now she wanted to review them. No. Claire, estate matters can be misinterpreted without context. Then I'll hire someone who understands the context. Her voice sharpened. You cannot walk away with property from a house you do not own. Vanessa's head turned slowly toward her. The trap in my mother's sentence became visible to all of us. If the box belonged to the house, Vanessa owned it. If it belonged to me, my mother had failed to disclose it during the sale. Either way, someone had lied. I held the box against my chest. Vanessa stepped aside from the doorway. Take it. My mother stared at her. Vanessa. I said take it, Claire. There was no kindness in her decision. Only self-preservation. Whatever was inside, she wanted distance from it. I walked toward my car. My mother followed me across the gravel. You are grieving, she said. Do not make decisions while you're emotional. I opened the passenger door and placed the box on the seat. You sold Grandma's house before she died. She authorized me to manage the trust. That isn't the same as permission. She was declining. She knew my phone number. She didn't understand the financial pressure. She understood enough to promise me the house 3 weeks ago. My mother froze. I watched her absorb the timeline. She called you? Yes. What did she say? That she had made sure Cedar House would be mine. Her lips parted. For the first time all day, she looked afraid rather than angry. When? 3 weeks ago. That isn't possible. Why? She looked toward the porch. Vanessa was watching us. My mother lowered her voice. Because by then, your grandmother was no longer making calls herself. A chill moved through me. What are you talking about? Her phone was kept at the nurse's station after she fell. I spoke to her for 11 minutes. That could not have happened. I know her voice. I am telling you. And I'm telling you she knew the house had been sold. My mother stopped breathing for a second. Not metaphorically. I saw her chest become still. What did she say about the sale? She didn't mention it. A strange relief crossed her face. Small. Immediate. Damning. Then she reached for the car door. Give me the box. I stepped between her and the seat. No. You don't know what your grandmother placed inside. That's the first honest thing you've said today. Her hand dropped. Rain gathered along her eyelashes. For one moment, she looked older than I remembered. Not fragile. Exposed. Claire, she said quietly, there are things you do not understand about this family. I understand that you sold my inheritance. I prevented a financial disaster. For whom? She looked away. That was my answer. I drove to a roadside motel 20 miles outside town. Not the hotel where the reception was being held. Not anywhere my mother would think to search first. The room smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet. A red vacancy sign flashed through the curtains, staining the walls every few seconds. I placed the metal box on the bed. The brass lock looked old, but the envelope taped beneath the handle was new. Inside it was a small key. And one sheet of paper. My grandmother's handwriting trembled across the page. Claire. If you are reading this, your mother has already told you a version of events that makes her sound helpless. She was not helpless. I stopped. My hands began to shake. Not from anger. From recognition. My grandmother knew. She had anticipated the shape of the lie before I ever heard it. I continued reading. The house was protected for you. Diane could manage the trust, but she could not sell Cedar House for her personal benefit. If she has done so, the records in this box will show you how. Outside, a truck passed on the wet highway. Its headlights swept across the room. I looked toward the locked door. Then back at the page. The final paragraph was shorter. Do not confront her until you understand what she traded away. The house is only the part you can see. I unlocked the box. Inside were bank statements, trust documents, property valuations, and copies of checks signed by my mother. There were photographs of Cedar House taken before the sale. Emails between my mother and Vanessa's company. And beneath them, a sealed legal folder marked with a date from 9 months earlier. I opened it carefully. The first page was a draft amendment to the family trust. My name appeared 3 times. Vanessa's appeared once. But it was the final document that changed the temperature of the room. A private loan agreement. My mother had borrowed against the value of Cedar House nearly a year before selling it. The lender was not a bank. It was Vanessa. The sale had not rescued the estate from debt. The debt had been created to force the sale. And beside my mother's signature was a handwritten note detailing what the borrowed money had funded. A waterfront condominium. A luxury vehicle. Membership fees at a private club. None of it belonged to my grandmother. None of it benefited the trust. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the neon sign buzz outside. For years, I believed my mother had failed to protect me because she was weak. That night, I understood something worse. She had always known how to protect what mattered to her. I simply had never been included on that list. My phone lit up. 7 missed calls from my mother. 2 from the estate attorney. Then a message from an unknown number. Claire, this is Vanessa. Diane has not told me the full truth. We need to speak before she does something irreversible. I read it twice. A second message appeared. Do not trust the attorney. Then a third. A photograph. My mother stood inside the old East study holding an open gasoline can beside a stack of documents. The image had been taken through the window. Beneath it, Vanessa had written 6 words. She is trying to destroy everything. I was already reaching for my coat when my mother called again. This time, I answered. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said, very softly, Claire, bring me the box, and I will tell you what your grandmother did to you. Some betrayals do not end when you discover them. They change shape. They ask you to choose which liar deserves to speak first. And as I drove back toward Cedar House through the rain, I still believed the greatest thing my mother had stolen was my inheritance. I had no idea she had also sold 5 years of my future. And Vanessa Cole had the contract to prove it. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, if your own family sold the future promised to you, would you fight to recover it, or walk away and build something they could never touch? The rain had become heavier by the time I reached Cedar House. Water rushed along the edges of the road, carrying leaves and small branches downhill. The old stone wall appeared through the darkness in pieces, illuminated each time lightning opened the sky. The front gates were standing wide open. My mother's car was parked near the garden. Vanessa's was gone. I slowed as I approached the house. Every downstairs window was lit. From a distance, Cedar House looked almost welcoming. That was the cruelest thing about familiar places. Even after they had been taken from you, they still knew how to look like home. I stopped behind the moving truck and reached beneath the passenger seat for the metal box. Then I hesitated. My mother had asked me to bring it. Vanessa had warned me not to trust the attorney. Someone had photographed my mother beside a gasoline can. Every person involved seemed to know more than I did. And every one of them needed something from me. So I left the box locked inside the car. I took only my phone and the envelope from my grandmother. Then I crossed the gravel. The front door was open. The smell reached me before I stepped inside. Not smoke. Fuel. Sharp and chemical, floating beneath the damp scent of plaster and old wood. Mom? My voice carried through the entrance hall. No answer. Plastic sheets had been ripped from the floors and pushed against the walls. Drawers were open. Cardboard boxes had been overturned. Framed photographs lay face down beside the staircase. The house looked less like it was being renovated and more like it had been searched. I moved toward the east hallway. Mom? A floorboard creaked above me. Then silence. I opened the door to my grandmother's study. The gasoline can stood beside the desk. Open. But the documents Vanessa had photographed were gone. My mother was standing near the fireplace with a leather folder tucked beneath one arm. She had removed her wet coat. Her black funeral dress was wrinkled, and a strand of hair had come loose near her cheek. I had seen my mother angry. I had seen her disappointed. I had seen her perform sadness with extraordinary skill. I had never seen her frightened. Until that night. "You came," she said. "You told me you wanted to explain." Her eyes moved toward my hands. "Where is the box?" "Somewhere safe." Her expression tightened. "You have no idea what you are carrying around." "I've read enough." "How much?" "The loan agreement." She closed her eyes briefly. Not with guilt. With calculation. When she opened them again, her face was calmer. "Your grandmother had become obsessed with controlling what happened after her death. She was trying to protect the trust. She was trying to punish me. For buying a condominium with her money? It wasn't her money." I stared at her. She corrected herself quickly. "Not entirely. The trust statements say otherwise. Statements do not show the full history." "What history?" My mother crossed the study and closed the door behind me. The click of the latch sounded unnaturally loud. "Before your grandfather died, he promised me a portion of the estate. There would be paperwork. There was an understanding. An understanding isn't ownership." The corner of her mouth moved. She recognized Vanessa's words in mine. "She has already been speaking to you, hasn't she?" "She sent me the photograph." My mother glanced toward the gasoline can. "That was staged." "By whom?" "Vanessa." "She staged you inside the study?" "She left the can here. She wanted you to believe I was destroying evidence." "Were you?" "No. You were holding documents beside an open container of fuel." "I was moving them." "To where?" "A secure location." I looked at the leather folder beneath her arm. She held it tighter. "What's inside?" "Nothing relevant to you." "Then show me." Her face hardened. "This is exactly what Eleanor did. She made you believe every family decision required your approval. She made me a beneficiary. She made you a weapon." The words landed harder than I expected. Not because I believed them. Because part of me recognized the resentment behind them. My mother had not sold the house only for money. She had sold it because my grandmother had chosen me. "Tell me what Grandma did to me," I said. My mother was quiet. "You said she stole 5 years of my future." "I said she made decisions that affected your future." "Which decisions?" She walked toward the window and stared into the rain. "When you were 29, you applied for a position at Hawthorne Strategic." The company name pulled something old from my memory. A glass office tower. A final interview. A job I had wanted badly enough to rehearse answers in the bathroom mirror. I remember. "You were offered the role." "No. They chose someone else." My mother turned. "They chose you." For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. "That's not true. They sent the offer to Cedar House. I wasn't living here. You were using the estate as your permanent address." I had been moving between short-term rentals then, trying to leave a relationship that had become quietly controlling. My grandmother had offered to collect my mail. What happened to it? "Eleanor refused the offer for you." I laughed once. The sound came out thin. "She couldn't do that. She called them. She told them you were dealing with a health crisis and would not be relocating." My mouth went dry. "No. She believed the role would bring you back into contact with Vanessa's family. Hawthorne had nothing to do with Vanessa. One of their investors did. I took a step backward. The edge of the desk pressed against my hip. My grandmother had always encouraged my career. She had paid for my first business course when my mother said it was a waste of money. She had told me never to make myself smaller to keep other people comfortable. It did not fit. That was what made the accusation effective. It was impossible enough to reject. Specific enough to fear. Where's the proof? In the folder. Show me. My mother did not move. Why would you protect her? I asked. I'm not protecting her. Then let me see it. She was dying when she admitted it. That still doesn't explain why you kept it from me. She begged me. My mother's voice softened. She said you had finally become stable. She didn't want to destroy the way you saw her. That was more believable than I wanted it to be. Love often hid its worst decisions beneath the word protection. My grandmother had protected me before. Sometimes without asking what I wanted. Could she have crossed that line? My mother watched uncertainty enter my face. Then she pushed the folder toward me. Read it. Inside was a photocopy of a letter from Hawthorne Strategic. The date was 5 years earlier. The opening paragraph congratulated me. The salary was nearly double what I earned at the time. The position included equity. A handwritten note crossed the final page. Applicant declined by telephone due to medical reasons. Spoke with Eleanor Rowan. I read the line 3 times. The signature at the bottom belonged to the hiring director. My mother stood silently while the first crack appeared inside my memory of my grandmother. Why didn't the company call me directly? They did. Your phone number had changed. That was true. I had replaced my number after leaving Daniel. Very few people had the new one. Why would Grandma refuse without speaking to me? Because she was afraid. Of Vanessa? Of this town? Of what happened here? Of what might happen again? The letter trembled slightly in my hand. I hated that the explanation made emotional sense. Not complete sense. But enough. My grandmother had witnessed the aftermath of my high school years. She had found me one afternoon sitting in the pantry because it was the only room without windows. She knew what Vanessa had done. She knew what returning might cost me. Perhaps she believed she was saving me. Perhaps she had mistaken fear for wisdom. I looked up. How does that connect to the house? My mother's eyes shifted toward the folder. Hawthorne's equity package would be worth several $1,000,000 today. I already knew that. The firm had expanded aggressively. It had purchased competitors, launched an investment arm, and built a reputation for acquiring distressed companies. For years, I had watched its success from a distance, never knowing I had almost been part of it. You blame Grandma for that? I blame her for controlling everyone and calling it love. You borrowed against her property. I took what should have been mine. You created debt she had to carry. She humiliated me. So you sold the house to prove she couldn't stop you? My mother's face changed. The fear disappeared. What remained was something colder. You think this is about a building? It was her home. It was always her power. She stepped closer. She controlled your grandfather with it. She controlled me with it. Then she planned to control you from the grave. She left it to me. She left you an obligation. I wanted it. Because she trained you to want it. For one brief second, I saw my mother not as a villain but as a daughter who had spent her life competing with a woman she could never defeat. It did not excuse what she had done, but it explained the depth of it. This was not greed alone. It was an old war. And I had inherited the battlefield. A car door slammed outside. My mother looked toward the window. Did you tell anyone you were coming? No. Headlights moved across the wall. Then footsteps crossed the porch. The study door opened without a knock. The estate attorney entered first. Mr. Hale had represented my grandmother for nearly 20 years. He was in his late 60s, narrow-shouldered, with silver hair and an expression that always appeared mildly apologetic. Vanessa followed him. Her hair was wet now, and she had changed into a dark trench coat. My mother's entire body stiffened. You brought him? Vanessa closed the door. You were trying to alter the record. I was trying to remove my private documents from my property. Mr. Hale raised one hand. Let's keep this controlled. I looked at him. You knew about the sale. His gaze dropped. Yes. You knew I was the intended beneficiary. Yes. And you allowed it. The trust gave your mother broad authority. Not for personal benefit. A silence followed. Long enough to answer. My mother stepped toward him. Be careful, Arthur. Vanessa looked from one face to another. That sounds like a threat. It's advice. Mr. Hale removed his glasses and cleaned them with a cloth. A nervous habit. One I remembered from childhood. There were irregularities, he said. My mother's voice sharpened. There were interpretations. There were forged care estimates. The room went still. Even the rain seemed to recede. I looked at him. What forged estimates? Mr. Hale put his glasses back on. Projected medical and maintenance expenses were submitted to justify liquidating the property. Submitted by whom? He looked at my mother. She did not deny it. Vanessa turned toward her. You told me the estate was insolvent. It was becoming insolvent. You provided certified figures. They were forecasts. They were invented. Not entirely. Vanessa laughed under her breath. It was not the mocking sound I remembered. It was disbelief. For the first time, she looked less like my childhood bully and more like a businesswoman discovering she had purchased a liability. You used my loan to create the appearance of debt, she said. My mother raised her chin. You received the property at a discount. I received contaminated title. You knew the risk. I knew you were desperate. I did not know you were fraudulent. The word hung in the room. Fraudulent. Clean. Legal. Far more dangerous than cruel. Mr. Hale turned toward me. Claire, the documents in the metal box may invalidate portions of the transaction. May? If the trust amendment is enforceable, the sale could be challenged. My mother shook her head. It was never executed. It was witnessed. By a nurse who has since left the country. Her statement was recorded. My mother's confidence faltered. Only slightly. But everyone saw it. I thought of the audio files listed in the inventory inside the box. I had not opened them. Not yet. Vanessa stepped toward me. Where is it? Safe. We need the documents tonight. No, I said. She blinked. You understand the house could be returned to you? I understand everyone in this room has lied to me. I did not know the sale was fraudulent. You knew it was personal. I knew your mother needed money. You knew who I was. Her jaw tightened. Yes. And you still bought it. She looked toward the hallway. When Diane approached me, I thought you had abandoned the place. She told you that? She said you wanted nothing connected to this town. Vanessa paused. And I believed her because it sounded true. That made it acceptable? No. Her answer came too quickly to be strategic. It surprised both of us. No, she repeated. It made it easy. There was more honesty in that sentence than I had heard from anyone all day. Vanessa had not purchased Cedar House because she needed it. She had purchased the feeling attached to it. The girl who once controlled the school had grown into a woman who collected symbols. My grandmother's house was one more trophy. And somewhere beneath the business language, she knew it. Mr. Hale suggested we all move to the dining room. The study, he said, contained too many combustible materials. No one smiled. We gathered around the long walnut table where my grandmother once served Sunday lunches. The room had been partly emptied. Only 6 chairs remained. Rain streaked the tall windows. Vanessa sat opposite my mother. Mr. Hale placed a recorder beside his notepad. I remained standing. I'm not giving anyone the box tonight, I said. My mother leaned back. Then this conversation is pointless. No. It's finally useful. I looked at Mr. Hale. How much of the sale money entered the trust? He cleared his throat. Approximately 40%. Vanessa turned sharply. That is not possible. The remainder was distributed through management reimbursements, private debt settlements, and associated fees. Paid to whom? My mother stood. I'm leaving. Vanessa blocked the doorway. You're staying. My mother stared at her. Move. No. There was no smile now. No polished charm. Only the hard edge of one predator realizing another had taken too much. Mr. Hale continued. Several payments went to entities connected to Diane. Connected how? An interior design firm. A travel consultancy. A property management company. I looked at my mother. You created companies? They were legitimate. Did they perform work? Some. Mr. Hale answered quietly. Very little. My mother turned toward him. You have spent years billing this family for silence. His face reddened. That is not fair. It is accurate. He looked down. And in that reaction, I saw another hidden truth. My grandmother's attorney had not simply failed to stop the sale. He had been paid not to look closely. The dining room clock had been removed, but I could still hear it in my memory. A steady ticking that used to fill the pauses between conversations. Without it, the silence felt exposed. I looked at each of them. My mother. My bully. The attorney who had protected paperwork instead of people. Every person who might have helped me had benefited from my ignorance. That realization did not make me angry. Not immediately. It made me calm. A frightening kind of calm. The kind that arrives when hope finally leaves. Here's what happens next, I said. My mother gave a tired laugh. You are not in a position to dictate anything. I have the original records. You have copies. You don't know that. She went quiet. I continued. I will retain independent counsel. No one here contacts me directly. Every message goes through my attorney. Vanessa stood. I need access to those documents to protect my company. That sounds like your problem. If the sale collapses, the renovations stop. Contractors sue. Investors panic. You should have investigated before buying. Her eyes hardened. The old Vanessa surfaced. You think this gives you power over me? No. I picked up my coat. I think it shows how little power you actually had. My mother followed me into the entrance hall. Claire. I kept walking. Claire, wait. I stopped near the front door. She lowered her voice. If you challenge the sale, everything becomes public. That should concern you more than me. You will drag Eleanor's name through court. Her records will speak for her. You still don't understand what she did. I understand enough. No. You understand the version that makes you feel chosen. I turned. My mother's face had softened. It was the expression she used when she wanted to injure me gently. The Hawthorne letter was not the only opportunity she blocked. I said nothing. She interfered with Daniel too. My body reacted before my mind did. A tightening beneath the ribs. What about him? She paid him to leave. The hallway seemed to narrow. That's ridiculous. She knew he had debts. She gave him money and told him never to contact you again. He left because I ended it. He left because Eleanor made sure he had somewhere better to go. The story struck directly at an old wound. Daniel had vanished 2 weeks after I finally told him I needed space. He emptied our joint account, moved out while I was at work, and sent one message saying he had accepted a job overseas. I had hated him for years. But beneath the hatred lived a private humiliation. The fear that I had been so easy to abandon. My mother understood that. Of course she did. Where's the proof? In the box, she said. I studied her face. You don't know what's inside. I know because I helped arrange the payment. The words came quietly. Almost tenderly. I could not tell whether she was confessing or manufacturing another fracture. That was the problem with a skilled liar. Eventually, even truth sounded contaminated. Outside, the rain had softened. Vanessa stood beneath the porch roof as I reached my car. You should not drive alone, she said. I'm not getting into a car with you. I wasn't offering. She glanced toward the house. Diane will destroy whatever she can. She already destroyed enough. Vanessa folded her arms. You hate me. That isn't a question. You have every reason to. The admission irritated me more than denial would have. You don't get credit for recognizing the obvious. I'm not asking for credit. Then what are you asking for? A temporary alignment. I almost smiled. You bought my grandmother's home and now you want to align with me? I want to survive the consequences of trusting your mother. That makes 2 of us. She stepped closer. I can give you access to company records, transaction histories, emails, everything connected to the sale. In exchange for what? You don't pursue damages against my company. You haven't even seen my case. I've seen enough. Lightning moved silently behind the clouds. Vanessa's face looked different without the controlled lighting of the church or the warm glow of the porch. Older. Tired. More human than I wanted her to be. Why did you really buy Cedar House? I asked. She looked toward the second-floor windows. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Because you loved it. The answer was so simple that I thought I had misheard. What? You always had one place I couldn't enter. She gave a small, embarrassed laugh. At school, I could take your friends. Your reputation. Your scholarship interview. But you would leave at the end of the day and come here. Her eyes remained on the house. You looked different when your grandmother picked you up. Safe, I suppose. The word came out reluctantly. I hated that. I stared at her. All those years, I had imagined Vanessa's cruelty came from confidence. Money. Beauty. Social power. It had never occurred to me that she envied anything about my life. Not because I believed I had nothing. Because she had trained me to believe it. So you bought the house to prove you could enter it? Yes. The honesty was almost ugly. Was it worth it? Vanessa looked through the open doorway toward my mother. No. I drove away without agreeing to anything. At the motel, I carried the metal box into the bathroom and locked the door behind me. It was irrational. The room had only one entrance. But small barriers mattered when trust had collapsed. I placed the box inside the empty bathtub and removed every document. Near the bottom, I found a small digital recorder sealed in plastic. The battery still worked. There were 12 audio files. The first 11 were labeled by date. The final one had my name. I pressed play. For several seconds, there was only static. Then my grandmother's voice filled the bathroom. Weak. Breathless. Unmistakable. Claire, if you are hearing this, Diane sold the house. I sat on the closed toilet lid. My hands tightened around the recorder. She will tell you I interfered with your life, my grandmother continued. Some of that will be true. My throat closed. She will show you the Hawthorne letter. I did refuse that position on your behalf. I believed I was protecting you from people connected to Vanessa's father. I was wrong. I took a choice from you, and I have regretted it every day. I covered my mouth. The confession hurt differently because it was real. My mother had not invented it. She had only weaponized it. Grandma continued. I also paid Daniel to leave. But not because I wanted to control whom you loved. A long pause followed. I could hear her struggling to breathe. He came to me first. The bathroom seemed to become colder. He said he had copies of private photographs and messages. He threatened to send them to your employer if I did not pay his debts. My fingers went numb. He had already taken money from your account. I believed paying him would give you time to leave safely. Another pause. I should have told you. I was ashamed that I had negotiated with him instead of trusting your strength. I lowered my head. Every memory rearranged itself. Daniel's sudden departure. His silence. The empty account. My grandmother's insistence that I stay with her for 2 weeks afterward. She had protected me. But she had also hidden the danger. Love and control had lived beside each other in her choices. That was harder to forgive than simple betrayal. Because it came from someone I loved. The recording continued. Your mother helped arrange the payment. She kept copies. Years later, she used them to convince you that I had destroyed your future. My breathing stopped. She will not tell you that Daniel returned. I looked up. 3 months ago, he contacted Diane. He offered her information about the trust in exchange for money. A faint sound entered the recording. A door closing. My grandmother lowered her voice. He knows something about the sale. Something Diane is afraid you will discover. The recording crackled. Then her final sentence came through. Do not fight them for the house until you know why they needed you gone. The file ended. I listened again. Then once more. Not because I had missed the words. Because I needed to hear the limits of what she said. She did not say my mother had forged my signature. She did not say Daniel helped sell the house. She did not say why anyone needed me gone. Only that they did. I searched the remaining files. Most contained conversations between my grandmother and Mr. Hale. In one, she questioned unusual transfers from the trust. In another, she demanded that my mother be removed as trustee. The final dated recording was made 2 weeks before her death. Mr. Hale's voice sounded strained. If we remove Diane now, she may challenge your capacity. Let her, my grandmother replied. She may say Claire influenced you. Claire does not know. That could help. No. It could leave her unprepared. Mr. Hale was silent. Then he said, there is another issue. What? The buyer's financing is connected to Hawthorne Strategic. I sat straighter. The firm again. The job I had lost. The company my mother claimed my grandmother feared. Mr. Hale continued. One of Hawthorne's subsidiaries purchased Vanessa's debt. If the sale fails, they gain control of her company. My grandmother's voice became sharper. Who authorized that structure? I don't know. You do know. A long silence. Then Mr. Hale said something so quietly I had to raise the volume. Daniel Mercer arranged it. By sunrise, I had created 3 copies of every document. 1 remained in the box. 1 went into the motel safe. The 3rd I uploaded to an encrypted cloud account under a new password. I sent a brief email to an attorney in the city whose work I had followed for years. Her name was Naomi Brooks. She specialized in trust litigation and corporate fraud. I attached no files. I wrote only. I may have evidence that a trustee engineered the sale of protected property through a fraudulent debt structure. The transaction may involve a private company, a shell lender, and a former domestic partner. I need confidentiality before disclosure. Her reply came 20 minutes later. Do not contact any party again. Do not surrender original records. Call me at 8. At 7:58, I was sitting beside the motel window with cold coffee between my hands. At 8 o'clock, my phone rang. Naomi did not waste time with sympathy. That was the first reason I trusted her. She asked dates, names, document types, who possessed originals, whether my grandmother had been declared legally incapacitated, whether I had signed anything related to the trust. Then she asked a question no one else had asked. Who benefits if you challenge the sale immediately? I looked out at the highway. Possibly me. That is not what I asked. I thought of Vanessa. Her distressed company. Hawthorne's subsidiary waiting to absorb it. Daniel arranging the debt. If the sale collapses, Hawthorne gains control of Vanessa's company. And if the sale stands? My mother keeps the money. Then both outcomes may have been designed. The words settled heavily. Naomi continued. Your mother may believe she engineered this. Vanessa may believe she purchased the estate. But someone positioned themselves to benefit whether the transaction survived or failed. Daniel. Possibly. Or someone above him. What should I do? Disappear. I almost laughed. I'm serious, she said. Do not file suit yet. Do not threaten anyone. Let them believe you are overwhelmed and leaving town. You want me to walk away? I want you to stop performing the role they prepared for you. By noon, I had checked out of the motel. I sent my mother one message. I found enough to know I cannot do this right now. I'm returning to the city. Keep the house. I sent Vanessa a different one. I will not interfere with the sale. Do not contact me again. I sent Mr. Hale nothing. Then I changed my phone number. Naomi arranged for the documents to be collected through a private courier. She filed no public claim. No warning letter. No demand. To everyone involved, I disappeared. That was what they expected me to do. The wounded daughter. The humiliated outsider. The woman who left town once and would leave again. They mistook my silence for surrender because they had never seen silence used as strategy. The first year was not cinematic. There was no triumphant montage. No glass office. No sudden fortune. There was a rented room above a laundromat because legal consultations had emptied my savings. There were 12-hour workdays and dinners eaten from paper containers. There were mornings when grief arrived before I opened my eyes. I mourned my grandmother. Then I mourned the version of her I had believed in. Then, slowly, I learned to love her as a flawed woman rather than a perfect refuge. That was harder. But it was real. Naomi investigated quietly. Daniel Mercer had joined Hawthorne Strategic 2 years after I lost the job offer. He worked in distressed acquisitions. His specialty was identifying companies under legal or financial pressure, then structuring debt that allowed Hawthorne to gain control. Vanessa's company was one of his targets. Cedar House had not been the objective. It had been collateral. My mother had believed she was selling the estate to fund her new life. Vanessa had believed she was buying a trophy and refinancing her company. Daniel had used both women to build a transaction that would eventually deliver Vanessa's business to Hawthorne. And because the trust documents named me as a protected beneficiary, my challenge had been anticipated. That was why he needed me gone. Not dead. Not harmed. Just discredited, exhausted, and far away. Naomi advised patience. Right now, you are evidence, she told me. You need to become leverage. I did not understand at first. Then she showed me Hawthorne's structure. The company did not win through genius. It won because its targets ran out of time. Founders became desperate. Families turned on one another. Lenders panicked. Hawthorne waited until everyone else was emotional. Then it purchased control cheaply. I recognized the method. It was Vanessa's old cruelty transformed into finance. Create pressure. Control the story. Make the victim look unstable. Offer rescue after causing the crisis. I knew that psychology. I had lived inside it. I began studying acquisitions at night. Not revenge. Structure. Debt. Governance. Compliance. Risk. I took certification courses and accepted contract work for small companies preparing to sell. At first, I reviewed documents. Then I found errors their advisors had missed. A hidden liability. A supplier agreement that transferred control during a sale. A founder who had signed away voting rights without understanding the clause. I was not brilliant. I was careful. There is a difference. Brilliance is admired. Carefulness is underestimated. That made it useful. In the second year, I helped a regional logistics company avoid a predatory acquisition. Its owner, Martin Hayes, was 71 and recovering from heart surgery. His children wanted him to sell. The buyer offered speed, cash, and reassurance. The contract also allowed the buyer to close 3 depots and terminate the pension program 6 months later. I found the clause. Martin canceled the deal. 3 weeks later, he asked me to advise him permanently. 6 months after that, he introduced me to 2 other business owners facing similar pressure. My consulting practice grew quietly. No advertisements. No press. Only referrals from people who had almost lost everything. My mother wrote during the 3rd year. The first message came through an old email account I had forgotten to close. I hope you are well. I think enough time has passed for us to speak calmly. I deleted it. A month later. Vanessa has stopped making payments on part of our agreement. This affects me too. Then, your grandmother would not want us divided over money. That one almost made me laugh. When manipulation failed, she borrowed the voice of the dead. I saved every message. Naomi told me not to reply. So I didn't. Vanessa's company expanded too quickly. Cedar House became a luxury retreat, exactly as she had promised. Photographs appeared online. The rose garden had been replaced with a stone terrace. My grandmother's kitchen became a cocktail bar. Executives posed beside the staircase where Vanessa once told me I no longer belonged. I studied every image. Not because I wanted to torture myself. Because businesses reveal pressure through presentation. When the company was stable, Vanessa posted clients. When it struggled, she posted architecture. Then awards. Then inspirational quotes about resilience. By the fourth year, the photographs became less frequent. The retreat stopped accepting bookings during winter. 2 senior executives resigned. A former client filed a lawsuit alleging Vanessa's company had misrepresented investor funds. Hawthorne Strategic purchased more of its debt. Daniel had waited patiently. So had I. That same year, Martin Hayes offered me a partnership in a private investment group he was forming with 3 retired founders. They wanted to acquire small companies without stripping them. Keep employees. Fix operations. Replace reckless leadership only when necessary. Most investors look at numbers and see weakness, Martin told me. You look at weakness and ask who created it. I joined with every dollar I had saved. We called the firm Northlight Partners. The name meant nothing publicly. That was intentional. We made 2 small acquisitions. Then 4. I became responsible for due diligence and restructuring. I learned how companies behaved when they believed no one was watching. I learned which executives lied smoothly and which lied badly. I learned that power rarely entered a room loudly. Usually, it arrived as a clause on page 47. 5 years after my grandmother's funeral, Naomi called me at 6:30 one morning. Vanessa's company is seeking emergency capital. I stood beside the windows of Northlight's office, watching the city wake beneath a gray winter sky. How much? Enough to settle the lawsuit and refinance Hawthorne's debt. Who else is bidding? 2 private equity firms. Hawthorne is also offering a rescue package. That isn't a rescue. No. I looked at the acquisition brief on my desk. Vanessa Cole Holdings. 23 properties. 3 hospitality businesses. 1 corporate retreat operating from Cedar House. Nearly 400 employees. And debt structured to place Daniel 1 missed payment away from control. What does Martin think? I asked. He thinks the company is salvageable. And you? I think this is the first moment in 5 years when every person involved needs something from you. The emergency investment process was confidential. Vanessa would not know the bidder names until the final stage. Northlight created a special acquisition entity. No public connection to me. No familiar directors. No indication that Claire Rowan had ever seen the documents. We offered enough to settle the lawsuit, refinance the debt, and preserve operations. In return, the investor would receive controlling interest. 51%. Vanessa would remain chief executive temporarily. Subject to performance review. Subject to conduct standards. Subject to removal by the new board. Martin read the terms and looked at me across the conference table. Are you doing this to save the company? Yes. And Vanessa? She is part of the company. That was not my question. I held his gaze. I don't know yet. He nodded slowly. That is the only answer I would have trusted. 3 weeks later, Northlight's offer was selected. Not because it was the largest. Because Hawthorne's rescue package would have eliminated most of the workforce. Ours preserved jobs. Vanessa signed the term sheet at 11:42 on a Thursday morning. Her electronic signature appeared beneath the name of our acquisition entity. Greyhaven Capital. She had no idea who controlled it. At noon, Daniel called Naomi. Not me. He did not know I was involved. He only knew someone had outbid Hawthorne and disrupted 5 years of planning. His message was brief. Tell Claire the past has become expensive. Naomi played the recording twice. Then she asked, do you want to respond? I looked down at the signed agreement. For years, I had imagined confronting Daniel. Telling him I knew about the blackmail. The stolen job. The trust scheme. But confrontation was what he expected. Emotion created movement. Movement created mistakes. No, I said. Not yet. The acquisition closed 2 months later. On the final morning, Northlight's board gathered in silence while documents moved between lawyers. At 10:07, Greyhaven Capital became the majority owner of Vanessa Cole Holdings. At 10:09, Vanessa received formal notice that new corporate controls would take effect immediately. At 10:15, my mother emailed the company asking whether her unpaid consulting invoices would be honored. At 10:22, Daniel attempted to purchase the remaining debt through a third party. At 10:31, we blocked the transfer. And at 11 o'clock, I received access to every internal company record, including the original purchase file for Cedar House. I opened it alone. The first documents were familiar. Valuations. Loan agreements. Maintenance estimates. Then I found an attachment that had never appeared in my grandmother's box. A beneficiary risk memorandum. My name was written at the top. It contained my former addresses. Employment history. Medical information. Details about Daniel. Notes about my relationship with my mother. And a final recommendation. Subject is likely to withdraw under sustained personal pressure. Avoid litigation unless necessary. Emotional isolation remains the most effective strategy. The document had been prepared 5 years earlier. The author was listed only by initials. DM. Daniel Mercer. But beneath his name was an approval signature. Not Vanessa's. Not my mother's. Mr. Hale's. My grandmother's attorney had not been paid merely to remain silent. He had helped design the strategy to remove me. I sat in the boardroom long after everyone else had left. The city lights reflected against the glass. 5 years earlier, I had driven away from Cedar House believing 3 people had betrayed me. My mother. Vanessa. Daniel. Now I understood the circle was wider. And somewhere inside the company files was the reason my grandmother had spent her final months recording conversations instead of going to the police. My phone vibrated. An internal alert appeared from Vanessa's executive account. She had requested an emergency meeting with Greyhaven's anonymous controlling partner. Her message was only one sentence. Whoever you are, Hawthorne is not your real enemy. A second attachment followed. A photograph taken outside Cedar House the night of my grandmother's death. Mr. Hale stood near the rear entrance. Beside him was Daniel. And between them, barely visible beneath the porch light, was my mother. Vanessa had added a note beneath the image. Eleanor did not die in her sleep. 5 years of patience had brought me control of Vanessa's company. But as I stared at that photograph, I understood the takeover had never been the real ending. It was only the door. And everyone I had spent years preparing to confront was waiting on the other side. Vanessa's message stayed on my screen. Eleanor did not die in her sleep. For 5 years, I had trained myself not to react before I understood. That discipline had saved companies. It had protected clients. It had kept me from calling my mother on nights when anger made every unanswered question feel urgent. But discipline is different when the dead are involved. My finger hovered over Vanessa's number. I wanted to call her immediately. I wanted to demand names, dates, and explanations. Instead, I forwarded the photograph to Naomi. She called less than a minute later. Do not contact Vanessa from your personal phone. What does she know? We don't know yet. She says my grandmother didn't die naturally. She says she did not die in her sleep. Those are not necessarily the same claim. I stood and walked toward the boardroom window. Below me, people crossed the street beneath black umbrellas, unaware that the most stable memory of my life had just shifted again. What do? We preserve the photograph, verify its metadata, and arrange a controlled interview. With Vanessa? With everyone eventually. I want her in the office today. No. Naomi's voice was calm. She requested a meeting with Greyhaven's owner. Let her believe that meeting is still pending. Right now, she does not know the person she is trying to reach is you. She'll know soon. Yes. But not before we learn why she sent the photograph. The new controls at Vanessa Cole Holdings took effect quietly. That was intentional. No dramatic announcement. No armed security replacing locks. No executive escorted through a crowded lobby. On Monday morning, every employee received an email informing them that Greyhaven Capital had completed its investment and appointed an interim oversight committee. The message promised continuity. It also required document preservation. No files could be deleted. No contracts could be altered without legal review. No payments to related parties would be processed until an audit was complete. At 9:14, my mother submitted 3 invoices through the company portal. At 9:19, all 3 were flagged. At 9:32, she called the finance department and demanded to know why a consulting agreement she had relied on for years was suddenly under review. The finance director recorded the call. I have a direct arrangement with Vanessa, my mother said. The agreement appears to have expired 18 months ago. The director replied. It continued verbally. We require documentation. You don't understand. That money is not optional. Every word entered our evidence file. My mother still believed the company belonged to Vanessa. She had no idea she was asking her daughter for money. Vanessa reacted differently. She complied. At least publicly. She attended every board call, submitted passwords, and ordered senior managers to preserve company records. But she also began testing the new authority around her. She delayed one report by 3 hours. She changed the agenda of an executive meeting without approval. She contacted a former lender after being instructed not to communicate with creditors privately. None of the violations was large. That made them more revealing. She was pushing against the walls to measure how strong they were. So we tightened them. Not with impossible demands. With standards that should have existed long before Greyhaven arrived. Every executive expense required verification. Every property transaction required conflict of interest disclosure. Every employee complaint involving leadership was reopened. Every hospitality site underwent a safety and labor review. Vanessa called the process operational suffocation. Martin called it basic governance. I called it light. Because people behave differently when they discover someone has finally turned it on. The first serious finding came from a former employee named Rosa Delgado. Rosa had managed Cedar House during its first 2 years as an executive retreat. She had resigned after refusing to falsify occupancy figures for an investor report. Her complaint had been closed internally as a personality conflict. Greyhaven reopened it. Rosa agreed to speak by video call. She was 63, with silver hair cut close around her face and the steady expression of someone who had spent years being told she had misunderstood what she had witnessed. Ms. Cole wanted the property to appear profitable, she explained. It wasn't. Not at first. What did she ask you to change? Our investigator asked. Guest totals. Event income. Maintenance estimates. Did she make the request directly? Never in writing. Rosa gave a tired smile. She was careful. Then how did she communicate it? She would sit across from me and say, "These numbers don't reflect the future we are presenting." I recognized the technique. Do not order someone to lie. Make the truth sound like a failure of imagination. Rosa continued. When I refused, Diane Rowan began visiting. My mother's name changed the air in the room. What role did Ms. Rowan have? She said she represented the property's history. She reviewed guest experiences, decor, community relationships. I never understood why she was being paid. Neither did the company's records. My mother had received monthly consulting fees for services that produced no reports, deliverables, or documented meetings. What did she discuss with you? I asked through the voice filter we were using to protect Greyhaven's ownership. Rosa paused. She wanted to know whether anyone had found items left by Eleanor Rowan. What kind of items? Letters. Recordings. Documents. Did anyone find anything? One housekeeper found a sealed envelope behind a radiator. My pulse quickened. What happened to it? I gave it to Ms. Cole. And what did Ms. Cole do? Rosa looked toward her own window. She burned it. Vanessa denied burning anything. She did so during her first formal performance review. The meeting took place in the company's headquarters, a polished glass building overlooking the river. Vanessa sat at one end of the conference table. Greyhaven's legal counsel sat at the other. I watched remotely from a private office, my camera disabled and my identity protected behind the name C. Gray, the controlling representative of the investment entity. Rosa Delgado is lying, Vanessa said. Why would she? Counsel asked. She was terminated for cause. She resigned. She resigned before we could terminate her. For refusing to alter financial reports? For insubordination. The attorney placed a copy of Rosa's original complaint on the table. Vanessa did not touch it. Did you receive an envelope discovered at Cedar House? I received many items. Did you burn one? No. Did you destroy any material belonging to Eleanor Rowan? No. Did you preserve all documents related to the property acquisition? Yes. A folder appeared on my screen. Our digital audit team had recovered deleted photographs from Vanessa's old company phone. One showed a metal waste bin behind Cedar House. Inside it were partially burned papers. A corner of one page remained visible. My name appeared on it. I instructed counsel to display the image. For the first time since the acquisition, Vanessa lost control of her face. Not completely. Just enough. I can explain that. Please do. She looked directly at the black conference camera. At me, without knowing it was me. That material contained accusations that could not be verified. Then why destroy it? It was private. Whose privacy were you protecting? Vanessa said nothing. After the meeting, she sent Greyhaven another confidential message. I destroyed the letter because it accused Diane of changing Eleanor's medication. I had no proof, and I believed it was written while Eleanor was confused. 10 minutes later, another message arrived. I did not know Mr. Hale and Daniel were at the house that night until I reviewed the security archive years later. Then, I kept the photograph because I knew one day Diane would turn on me. Vanessa had not preserved the image for justice. She had preserved it as insurance. That felt more believable. People rarely keep dangerous evidence because they are brave. They keep it because they are afraid. Naomi arranged Vanessa's interview at a neutral law office. Vanessa believed she would be meeting Greyhaven's controlling partner through a remote connection. I sat behind one-way privacy glass in an adjoining room. She arrived 10 minutes early. No assistant. No driver. No carefully selected coat. She wore a gray suit and carried a leather briefcase that looked older than the rest of her belongings. When the interviewer asked about the night my grandmother died, Vanessa's first answer was careful. I was not present when Eleanor collapsed. Were you at Cedar House that evening? Earlier. Why? Diane requested a meeting. About what? The sale. The sale had already been finalized. What remained to discuss? Vanessa looked down at her hands. Eleanor had begun questioning the transaction. Diane said she might contact Claire. What did Diane want from you? She wanted the renovations accelerated so the property's original condition could not be documented. My chest tightened. The stripped walls. The discarded furniture. The frantic clearing of the study. It had not been renovation alone. It had been evidence removal disguised as improvement. Did you agree? Yes. The word came quietly. No excuse followed. The interviewer waited. Vanessa understood the silence. I told myself the sale was legal, she continued. I told myself Eleanor was confused and Diane was managing a difficult estate. But I also knew speed benefited me. Did you see Eleanor that night? Yes. Describe her condition. Vanessa shifted in her chair. She was alert. Angry. Physically weak, but aware. What did she say? She told me I had purchased stolen property. I closed my eyes. I could hear my grandmother saying it. Not loudly. She never needed volume when she was certain. What happened after that? Diane arrived with Mr. Hale. Daniel came later. Why was Daniel there? He represented Hawthorne's dead interest. At a private residence? He claimed a default event had occurred. What default? Vanessa's expression hardened. Eleanor had filed a notice challenging the property transfer. If the transfer became disputed, my company's loan terms allowed Hawthorne to demand immediate repayment. Daniel had built the trap perfectly. If my grandmother remained silent, the sale stood. If she challenged it, Vanessa's company collapsed into Hawthorne's hands. What did they want Eleanor to do? Withdraw the notice. Did she? No. What happened? Vanessa took a long breath. Diane gave her medication. What medication? I don't know. Was Diane authorized to administer it? She said the nurse had prepared it. Did you see the nurse? No. What happened after Eleanor took it? She became drowsy. Mr. Hale placed papers in front of her. Daniel said they only confirmed what had already been agreed. Did she sign? No. Why not? She pushed the papers away. Vanessa's voice became quieter. She looked at Diane and said, "You have spent your entire life mistaking possession for love." The sentence seemed to pass through the glass. My mother had heard my grandmother name the exact wound between them. And still, she had continued. "Then what happened?" the interviewer asked. Eleanor tried to stand. She lost her balance. Did she fall? Diane caught her. They called the nurse. When did you leave? When the nurse arrived. Was Eleanor alive? Yes. Conscious? Barely. Why did you later believe she did not die in her sleep? Vanessa opened the briefcase and removed a printed care log. The official report says the nurse found her unresponsive at 4:40 the next morning. But the security system recorded an ambulance entering the rear drive at 11:18 that night. The interviewer studied the page. Why would the report show a different time? I don't know. You had this information for 5 years. Yes. And you did nothing. Vanessa looked toward the dark screen where she believed Greyhaven's owner was watching. I was afraid the sale would be reversed. There it was. Not redemption. Not remorse pure enough to absolve her. Fear and self-interest. Human motives were rarely clean. I told myself Eleanor would have died soon anyway, she said. My hands curled beneath the desk. The interviewer did not react. And now? Vanessa looked older than she had when she entered. Now I know that was something a coward tells herself. The medical records were harder to obtain. My mother had controlled access after my grandmother's death. The nursing agency claimed several files had been lost during a software migration. The attending physician had retired. The private nurse, Helen Ward, had moved to Portugal. Naomi found her through a licensing database. Helen refused the first interview. Then the second. On the third request, we attached the security records and informed her that a court order might follow. She agreed to speak. Helen was 70 by then. Her voice trembled before we asked the first question. I knew this would come back, she said. She explained that my grandmother's prescribed sedative had been changed 3 days before her death. The dose on the medication chart was low. The bottle found in the house contained a stronger concentration. Who supplied it? Naomi asked. Mrs. Rowan. My mother? Yes. Did you authorize her to give Eleanor medication? No. Did you prepare a dose that night? No. Why did you not report that? Helen began crying. Not loudly. The contained crying of someone who had practiced guilt in private. When I arrived, Eleanor was unresponsive. Diane said she had only given the prescribed amount. Mr. Hale said reporting an administration error would trigger an investigation and damage the family. Was Eleanor taken to the hospital? Yes. Why do the records say she died at home the following morning? Because she was returned. I leaned closer to the speaker. Returned alive? Helen shook her head. No. The hospital had pronounced my grandmother dead shortly after midnight. My mother, Mr. Hale, and Daniel had pressured the private physician to amend the documentation, claiming my grandmother's written wish was to die at home. Her body was transported back. The official timeline was altered to avoid questions about who had administered the medication. It was not a planned killing. It was reckless control followed by deliberate concealment. My mother had wanted her sedated long enough to stop her from calling me and challenging the sale. She had not intended to end her life. But intention did not erase consequence. I listened to Helen's statement twice. Then I left the office and walked for nearly an hour. The city was bright and crowded. Delivery bicycles moved between cars. A child pressed both hands against the window of a bakery. Two elderly women argued affectionately over which bus to take. Life continued with an indifference that once would have offended me. That day, it comforted me. My grandmother's final hours had been controlled by frightened people making selfish decisions. But her entire life was larger than those hours. They did not get to reduce her to the way she died. My mother did not get that power. Neither did I. We turned the evidence over to the authorities. Quietly. No press conference. No anonymous leak. No theatrical arrest inside a crowded office. The investigation would take time. Medical records had been altered. Companies had moved money across multiple jurisdictions. Witnesses contradicted one another. Real consequences rarely arrived in a single dramatic scene. They arrived through subpoenas, interviews, frozen accounts, lawyers who stopped returning calls. My mother sensed the pressure before she knew its source. Her emails changed. "Claire, I need to speak with you about your grandmother." Then, "Certain people are trying to blame me for decisions we all made together." And finally, "I am your mother. Whatever you think happened, you owe me the chance to explain." I read the final message alone in my office. For most of my life, "I am your mother" had been used as a credential. A demand for loyalty. A reason she should be believed before she had earned belief. That afternoon, it sounded like what it truly was. A description. Nothing more. The company audit continued. Vanessa had inflated revenue, concealed complaints, and used Cedar House for private events billed as corporate development. She had also retained several capable employees and built businesses that could survive without her. Both things were true. At her second performance review, the board presented its findings. Vanessa listened without interruption. When counsel finished, she asked one question. "Has the board decided to remove me?" "Yes," Martin said. "For the accounting issues?" "For the accounting issues, governance failures, retaliation against employees, and concealment of material evidence." She looked toward the conference camera. "Is C. Gray listening?" I activated the microphone. "Yes." My voice was electronically altered. Vanessa leaned back. "I want the final decision delivered in person." "That is not required." "I know." Her eyes remained fixed on the camera. "But whoever owns this company has made this personal. You made it personal when you purchased Cedar House." The sentence escaped before I could stop it. Vanessa became completely still. 5 years had passed. My voice was distorted. But recognition is not always auditory. Sometimes it is the shape of a sentence. The patience behind it. The history no stranger could possess. "Claire," she whispered. No one in the room moved. I disabled the filter. "Yes." Vanessa closed her eyes. The silence that followed was not satisfying. I had imagined this moment during sleepless nights. I thought recognition would feel like a door opening. Instead, it felt like standing in the remains of a room after the fire had already gone out. "You bought the company," she said. "Greyhaven did." "You control Greyhaven." "Yes." A strained smile appeared. "Of course you do." There was nothing inevitable about it. "No." She looked down at the report. "You were simply more patient." "I was more careful." "That too." Martin asked whether she understood the board's findings. Vanessa nodded. Then she looked at the camera again. Are you firing me now? Your termination will be announced at the company's annual stakeholder event. Her brow furrowed. We cancelled it. It has been rescheduled. Where? I allowed the silence to hold for 1 second. Cedar House. The invitation described the event as a company renewal gala. Employees, investors, local officials, and community partners were invited. Attendance was mandatory for senior leadership. The location surprised everyone. Cedar House had been closed for 6 weeks under the explanation of urgent structural repairs. In reality, Northlight had purchased the property from Vanessa Cole Holdings as part of the restructuring. The transaction was legal, independently valued, and approved by the new board. The house belonged to me again. But I did not move into it. The first time I entered after the purchase, I stood alone in the entrance hall. The cocktail bar had been removed from my grandmother's kitchen. The corporate branding had been taken down. The wallpaper Vanessa selected peeled from one corner where workers had begun restoration. I placed my hand against the wall. For years, I had imagined touching the house and feeling triumphant. Instead, I felt tired. The building remembered me. But it also remembered what had happened after I left. A home could be recovered. Innocence could not. My mother accepted the gala invitation without knowing who owned Greyhaven. Her financial situation had deteriorated. The waterfront condominium had been placed under lien. Her club membership had been cancelled. Vanessa's company had stopped paying her consulting fees. The vehicle purchased through trust money had been repossessed. She had begun calling old acquaintances, describing herself as the victim of a corporate restructuring. 3 days before the gala, she sent Greyhaven a formal request for a private hardship payment. The request included a sentence that stayed with me. My long-standing association with Cedar House gives me a moral interest in the property's future. My mother had converted every relationship into a claim. Daughter. Trustee. Consultant. Moral stakeholder. Anything except what she had actually been. Responsible. On the evening of the gala, winter light faded early. Small lamps lined the drive. The stone walls glowed beneath the bare branches. Cars arrived slowly, tires whispering over damp gravel. Inside, the house looked closer to the place I remembered. Not perfectly restored. I did not want perfection. We kept the marks that mattered. The groove in the kitchen floor where my grandmother had stood. The repaired stair that still gave a small complaint beneath weight. The faded section of paneling where family photographs had hung for decades. Restoration should not erase history. It should make history visible without allowing it to imprison the future. I waited in the east bedroom while guests arrived below. The room had once been mine during childhood summers. The sloped ceiling remained. So did the window overlooking the garden. On the bed lay my grandmother's brass key. Police had returned it after documenting the estate records. I closed my hand around it. Naomi stood near the door. The authorities may contact Diane after tonight. Will they arrest her here? No. We requested discretion unless she attempts to leave the jurisdiction. Good. Naomi studied me. You are allowed to change your mind about speaking publicly. I'm not revealing the medical investigation. I know. The employees deserve to know why leadership is changing. The town deserves to know what the property will become. And your mother? I looked toward the garden. She deserves the truth. That is not the same as a public confrontation. No. I placed the key on the table. I'm not doing this to humiliate her. Are you sure? The question was not judgmental. That was why I answered honestly. Not completely. Naomi nodded. Then remember that before you go downstairs. Vanessa arrived at 7. She wore a dark green dress with no jewelry except a small pair of earrings. The old version of Vanessa would have entered the room slowly enough to be noticed. That evening, she moved along the wall. People greeted her with uncertainty. Some still believed she was chief executive. Others had heard rumors about the audit. She answered questions politely and drank sparkling water. At one point, she stood before a framed photograph of my grandmother that had been returned to the entrance hall. No one was close enough to hear what she said. Later, the security recording captured it. "I'm sorry." 2 words. Too late. But real. My mother arrived at 7:20. She wore the same pearl earrings she had worn to the funeral 5 years earlier. Her coat was new. Or borrowed. She entered with the posture of someone determined not to appear diminished. When she saw the restored entrance hall, her face changed. She touched the banister. For a second, her performance fell away. She was not a trustee or a consultant. She was a daughter returning to her mother's house. Then she noticed Vanessa. "What is happening?" she asked. Vanessa looked toward the staircase. "You should wait." "For whom?" Vanessa's expression held something close to pity. "For Claire." My mother's head turned sharply. Before she could respond, the lights dimmed. Martin stepped onto the temporary platform in the grand sitting room. Nearly 200 people gathered across the adjoining spaces. Employees stood beside local business owners. Contractors stood near investors. Rosa Delgado had returned as an invited guest. Helen Ward watched through a private video link from Portugal, not visible to the room. Mr. Hale was not present. His attorney had advised him not to attend. Daniel had attempted to board a flight 2 days earlier. A court order prevented him from leaving the country. Martin welcomed everyone. He spoke about financial stabilization, preserved jobs, settled claims, new governance. Then he introduced Greyhaven Capital's controlling partner. I stepped onto the upper landing. The room changed before I spoke. My mother saw me first. Her lips parted. Vanessa lowered her head. A murmur moved through the crowd. I walked down the staircase slowly. Not for drama. Because my legs felt heavier with every step. At the bottom, Martin offered me the microphone. I looked toward the employees. Most had never met me. To them, I was not the injured girl from the town. I was the person who now controlled their workplace. That distinction mattered. "Good evening," I said. "My name is Claire Rowan." The murmuring stopped. 5 years ago, I left this property believing I had lost my grandmother's home. I paused. Over time, I learned that Cedar House was only one part of a much larger financial arrangement. An arrangement that placed employees, investors, and this community at risk. My mother moved slightly toward the door. Naomi's investigator repositioned himself nearby. I continued. Greyhaven Capital invested in Vanessa Cole Holdings because the company contains real value. Not only property. People. Teams who continued working while leadership concealed problems from them. Several employees looked toward Vanessa. This company will continue operating. Jobs will be preserved wherever the underlying business supports them. The lawsuit has been settled. Predatory debt has been refinanced. No employee will be asked to pay for decisions they did not make. A quiet wave of relief moved through the room. Then I looked at Vanessa. Leadership, however, carries responsibility. She met my eyes. Effective tonight, Vanessa Cole has been removed as chief executive and from all operational authority. No applause followed. I was grateful. This was not entertainment. It was consequence. The board's decision is based on verified accounting misstatements, retaliation against employees, undisclosed conflicts, and destruction of material records. Vanessa inhaled slowly. Then she stepped forward. May I speak? Martin looked at me. I nodded. Vanessa accepted the microphone. 5 years earlier, she had stood on my grandmother's porch holding a key and told me I no longer belonged. Now she stood in the same house without title, authority, or control. But when she spoke, she did not attack me. I accept the board's decision, she said. A few people shifted in surprise. I spent much of my life believing ownership proved worth. Property. Attention. Influence. Her gaze moved through the room. I built parts of this company well. I also lied to protect what I built. I punished people who challenged me. And I purchased this house for reasons that had nothing to do with sound business. Her eyes found mine. I bought it because I knew Claire loved it. The room became very still. That is not strategy. It is cruelty with paperwork around it. My mother whispered, Vanessa, stop. Vanessa looked at her. No. Then she returned the microphone to me. It was not enough to repair the past. But accountability rarely arrives in a perfect form. Sometimes it begins with a person finally naming what they did without demanding forgiveness. My mother turned toward the entrance hall. Diane, I said. She stopped. Every part of me wanted to say more. To reveal the loans. The medication. The altered records. The years of lies. But Naomi's question returned to me. Are you doing this to inform people, or to humiliate her? The criminal investigation was not mine to perform in a ballroom. So I chose the truth that belonged in that room. My mother served as trustee of my grandmother's estate, I said. She used that authority to borrow against protected property and redirect estate funds for personal expenses. My mother turned. That is not the full story. No, I said. It isn't. She looked around at the witnesses. Then back at me. You planned this. I planned the company transition. You brought me here to embarrass me. I invited you because you repeatedly claimed a moral and financial interest in Cedar House. You deserve to hear directly what happens to it. Her face tightened. I am your mother. A familiar sentence. This time, it did not move me. Yes, I said. And I was your daughter when you sold the home promised to me. A small sound passed through the room. My mother's eyes filled with tears. For years, I had seen her cry at useful moments. But these tears looked different. Not softer. Less controlled. You left, she said. I was pushed out. You always chose Eleanor. She was there. So was I. No. My answer came quietly. You were nearby. That isn't the same thing. Her face collapsed for 1 second. There it was. The oldest wound between us. She had spent her life feeling unseen by her mother. Then she had made me feel the same way. Pain had moved through our family like an heirloom. Passed down because no one wanted to admit they were holding it. My mother walked closer. You think you understand everything because you found documents. No. I understand that documents reveal what people deny. Your grandmother controlled me. She controlled me too. That answer stopped her. I continued. She refused a job offer for me. She paid Daniel without telling me. She made choices about my life because she thought love gave her permission. My mother stared at me. For the first time, we were not defending opposite saints and villains. We were discussing the same flawed woman. I know what she did, I said. I also know what you did. She would have left me nothing. So you took everything. She had already chosen you. That was between you and her. It became between us the moment she put your name on the trust. Her voice rose. I was her daughter. And I was yours. The sentence entered the room and ended the argument. My mother looked away. No denial came. No clever reversal. Only silence. She asked for money before she left. Not loudly. Not in front of the crowd. She found me in the library after the presentation, where staff were preparing documents for the foundation announcement. Her mascara had smudged slightly beneath one eye. My accounts are frozen, she said. I know. I can't pay my attorney. I can't interfere with the investigation. I'm not asking you to interfere. You submitted hardship invoices through the company. I need somewhere to live. I studied her. Even after everything, a part of me wanted to solve the problem. That instinct had survived anger. It frightened me more than hatred would have. What happened to the condominium? Lien. The car? Gone. The private account? Her eyes shifted. There isn't much left. Naomi had already confirmed that most of the money had been spent, transferred, or lost through Daniel's investment schemes. My mother had traded a permanent home for temporary symbols. Now even the symbols were gone. I will not give you cash, I said. Her mouth tightened. Of course. I will pay directly for a modest apartment while the case proceeds. She looked at me. Surprised. There will be conditions. No contact outside legal channels. No attempts to access the company. No public statements about the investigation. You want to control me? No. I'm setting the limit of what I will provide. She gave a faint, bitter smile. You sound like Eleanor. Maybe. I let the truth sit between us. But I am telling you the conditions before I act. You can accept them or refuse. That was the difference my grandmother had failed to understand. Protection without consent could become another kind of control. My mother looked toward the shelves. What happens when the case ends? I don't know. Will you abandon me? The word nearly undid me. Not because she deserved reassurance. Because I had spent my childhood asking the same question without saying it. I won't promise a relationship we don't have, I said. But I won't leave you without basic safety. She nodded once. Then she left Cedar House through the side door. No one photographed her. No crowd watched. That was the mercy I could offer. Not absolution. Dignity. The investigation lasted 14 months. Mr. Hale surrendered his license and pleaded guilty to falsifying estate documents and obstructing an inquiry. Daniel was charged with financial fraud, extortion, and conspiracy related to the debt structure. The prosecution did not claim he intended my grandmother's death. It proved that he exploited the concealment afterward and used altered documents to advance Hawthorne's acquisition strategy. Hawthorne denied institutional knowledge. A civil settlement forced the firm to release its claim on several distressed companies and compensate affected investors. My mother pleaded guilty to misappropriating trust assets and falsifying medical information. The court considered her cooperation, her age, and the absence of evidence that she intended to cause my grandmother's death. She received a restricted sentence that included home confinement, financial restitution, and supervised probation. Some people in town thought it was too lenient. Others believed she had been punished enough. I learned not to measure healing through the length of another person's sentence. No court could return my grandmother. No verdict could give me the job I had lost or the 5 years spent rebuilding from someone else's deception. Justice mattered. But it was not restoration. It was a boundary society drew after harm had already occurred. Vanessa cooperated with investigators. Her testimony helped establish the timeline at Cedar House. In exchange, prosecutors did not pursue charges related to the altered death record, because evidence showed she learned of the falsification later. She still faced civil penalties for destroying records and misleading investors. She sold most of her remaining ownership to fund settlements. For the first time since adolescence, Vanessa Cole had no title. No company. No property bearing her name. 6 months after the gala, she requested a meeting. I agreed to 20 minutes in Naomi's office. Vanessa arrived without an attorney. "I'm not here to ask for my job back," she said. "You wouldn't get it." "I know." She placed my grandmother's brass key on the desk. "I kept this after the sale." I noticed. I told myself it belonged to the property. And now? Now I think I kept it because taking something from you still made me feel important. She pushed the key toward me. I did not reach for it immediately. "Why did you hate me?" Vanessa looked surprised. Then tired. "I didn't hate you at first." "What changed?" "You didn't need the things I needed." "That isn't true." "I know that now." She folded her hands. "My parents praised results. Popularity. Winning. Your grandmother looked at you as though you mattered before you achieved anything." Her voice weakened slightly. "I thought if I made everyone else reject you, that look would disappear." It didn't. No. A small smile crossed her face. "That made me worse." I picked up the key. "Understanding why you hurt me does not make the hurt smaller." "I know. And I don't forgive you." Her eyes lowered. "I know that too. But I believe your apology." She looked up. Those were not the words she expected. Believing an apology was not the same as removing consequence. It only meant I no longer needed to argue with reality. Vanessa had done what she did. She understood it now. What happened next belonged to her. Not me. My relationship with my mother became quieter. For the first year, we communicated only through supervised calls. She asked about the company. I refused to discuss it. She asked whether Cedar House looked the way it once had. I told her it never would. One afternoon, she said, "Your grandmother would hate what I became." I considered the sentence carefully. "She knew what you were becoming." "That's worse." "Yes." Silence followed. Then my mother asked, "Do you hate me?" I looked through my office window at the afternoon traffic. "No." Her breath caught. "I don't trust you," I continued. "I don't feel safe with you. I don't know whether we will ever have a normal relationship. But you don't hate me." "No." "Why?" "Because hatred would keep you too close." She cried after that. I did not comfort her. But I did not hang up. Some relationships are not repaired. They are rebuilt into smaller, safer shapes. A monthly call. A birthday card without a false declaration of closeness. A conversation ended when manipulation begins. It was not the reconciliation she wanted. It was the truth I could live with. Cedar House reopened 18 months after the gala. Not as a private residence. Not as an executive retreat. As the Eleanor Rowan Foundation for Women's Financial Recovery. The foundation provided legal guidance, temporary housing, and business training for women whose finances had been controlled by partners or family members. Some had lost inheritances. Others had been pressured into signing loans. Some were older women whose adult children had taken control of their pensions. Others were young and leaving relationships that looked respectable from the outside. We kept 6 bedrooms for temporary residents. The old dining room became a legal clinic twice a week. The East Study became a document recovery center where volunteers helped people organize statements, deeds, and contracts before evidence disappeared. My grandmother's kitchen became a kitchen again. No bar. No corporate logo. Just a long wooden table, warm lights, and the smell of coffee early each morning. Rosa Delgado became the foundation's operations director. She accepted only after confirming that no one would ever ask her to alter a number. Martin funded the first 3 years of the legal clinic. Naomi joined the board. The employees of Vanessa Cole Holdings voted to sponsor an annual emergency housing grant. The company itself survived. Without Vanessa, it became smaller and more stable. We sold properties that existed only to support appearances. We preserved the businesses that employed people and served real customers. Growth slowed. Trust improved. For the first time, no one needed to lie about the future. On the foundation's opening day, I stood in the rose garden. We had replanted it using cuttings preserved by one of my grandmother's neighbors. The flowers were still young. Thin stems. Small leaves. Nothing like the garden I remembered. But they were alive. A woman named Margaret approached me after the ceremony. She was 72 and had come to the foundation because her son had persuaded her to sign over control of her house. "You got yours back," she said. "I did. Does it feel the same?" I looked at Cedar House. Children of foundation residents were drawing with chalk near the steps. A volunteer carried boxes through the front door. From the kitchen, someone laughed. "No," I said. Margaret appeared disappointed. Then I added, "It feels useful." She smiled. That might be better. That evening, after everyone left, I walked through the rooms alone. The floors creaked beneath me. The windows reflected the last blue light of sunset. In the dining room, my grandmother's photograph stood on the mantel. I looked at her face for a long time. For years, I had needed her to be perfect because she was the one person who made me feel safe. Learning the truth had taken that perfection from me. But it had given me something more honest. My grandmother had loved me. She had also underestimated my ability to survive difficult truths. She protected me in ways that harmed me. She made choices that belonged to me. She regretted them. All of that could exist together. People did not become unreal because they disappointed us. Sometimes loving them honestly meant allowing the whole person to remain. I placed the brass key inside a small glass case near the entrance. Beneath it was a plaque. It did not mention Vanessa. It did not mention my mother. It read, "A locked door is not always protection. Sometimes freedom begins when you learn who holds the key." The house had been promised to me. Then sold. Then recovered. But by the end, ownership was the least important thing about it. I could have closed the gates and lived there alone. I could have filled every room with expensive furniture and called that victory. I could have made my mother drive past a place she could never enter. There were nights when that fantasy tempted me. But revenge built around exclusion would have made the house smaller. My grandmother had wanted Cedar House to protect me. I wanted it to protect people she would never meet. That was how I finally made the inheritance mine. Not by possessing what had been taken. By deciding what it would become. 5 years earlier, Vanessa stood on the porch and told me, "This isn't your home anymore." She believed the sentence would break me. For a while, it did. Then I built a life large enough that no single house could contain my sense of belonging. I became an investor. An employer. A woman people trusted with the truth when the paperwork said something else. I did not rise because betrayal made me fearless. I was afraid many times. I was lonely. I doubted myself. I grieved years I could not recover. I simply stopped letting fear make decisions for me. That was the difference. The best revenge was never making my mother poor. It was not removing Vanessa from her company. It was not watching Daniel lose the career he had built through other people's desperation. Those were consequences. The real victory was quieter. I no longer needed any of them to admit my value. I no longer waited for my mother to choose me. I no longer measured myself against the girl Vanessa had once convinced the town to reject. And I no longer confused returning to a place with returning to who I had been there. If someone in your own family sold the future they promised you, could you ever trust them again? Would you take back everything you lost? Or would you build something so meaningful that their betrayal became only the first chapter of your life? Tell me what you would do in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, subscribe and join us for more deeply human stories about betrayal, resilience, and the quiet choices that change a life. Because sometimes the strongest comeback is not destroying the people who hurt you. It is becoming someone their cruelty can no longer define. The best revenge isn't taking back what was yours. It's becoming someone they can never reach again.